In this video, we're going to show you how to replace your engine water pump on the 5.7 liter V8 engine. It's located right down here on the front side of your engine. I want to go ahead and remove our cap here off of our expansion tank. I'm going to pop that off and set that aside. Now on the bottom side here, right on the base of our wheel well area on the passenger side, there's going to be some plastic buttons here holding our lower splash guard to the fender liner. We're going to use our trim tool. We're just going to go up in here and we're just going to pop off the little buttons that are in here holding these together. Ours don't all match, so it looks like someone was already in here playing with these before. We're actually missing a button over here, and we have a zip tie there or some sort of anchoring strap. We're going to go ahead and pop that off, remove that, and let's go ahead and do the same for the driver's side. Okay, pop these buttons out here. On the front cross member, we have two 10mm bolts. Across the lower front portion of the bumper, there's a series of 7mm screws. Let's get to loosen and remove these. The little retaining clips on the back side here have come loose, so we need to grab that with a pair of pliers. I'll go ahead and remove those there. Now we get the screws removed. Got to lower this down. On the lower right-hand corner of our radiator, we have the drain plug or petcock right here. I'm going to go ahead and grab this. I'm going to turn it counterclockwise. Ours is stuck a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and grab a pair of pliers. Turn that. Now we have our catch can underneath to go ahead and catch our coolant as it comes out. Now our drain hose is not working as it should. So we're just going to adjust our catch can here. And just pull that plug right out. Now that our radiator is drained out, go ahead and install your drain plug. Now if you're able to loosen your drain plug and it drained out through the hose here, perfect. If you had to unscrew it and remove it completely, go ahead and just thread that back in, and we're just going to hand tighten that back in a place like that. Just give this a quick wipe down. And we'll go ahead and remove our drain pan. Grab your upper engine cover here. We're going to pop that up, remove that, set it aside. Let's disconnect our harness right here. There's a little red lock tab. I'm going to press that out. Pinch this tab, disconnect that like so. I'm going to use our screwdriver here, loosen up this clamp for the air intake tube. Okay, just give that a little wiggle woggle there and go ahead and pop that off. Let's go ahead and move this hose clamp off of our upper radiator. Slide that back. Now that we have our hose clamp pulled back, I'm going to go ahead and grab the hose clamp, break this free off of the thermostat neck here. Go ahead, grab that hose and work that off. With this disconnected, let's go ahead and do the same with the hose clamp to our radiator and remove this upper radiator hose. We have a pair of pliers on our other hose clamp. Let's go ahead and open that up and try and work that hose off. Good, set that hose aside. Now what we're going to do next is remove our serpentine or drive belt. It is very important that you remember how that belt is routed, unless you have some sort of decal or something referencing that underneath your hood. Good way to do it is simply draw where the belt is routed, your pulleys and accessories, and that way there, when you go to put that belt back on, it's routed the correct way. If it is routed the incorrect way, that can cause your engine to overheat prematurely and run into some major issues. So, good little tip. And we have our ratchet down on the front side of our tensioner here, and we want to pull this to the right. We're going to remove our serpentine or drive belt here. And we're going to go ahead and release that. Pull our ratchet out. I'm going to go ahead and remove our belt. Now is a good time for you to go ahead and inspect your drive belt. Fold that over, look for any cracks or pieces of rubber that are missing out of the belt. Ours looks good, so we're going to be able to go ahead and reuse our belt. On the front of our idler here, right underneath our thermostat area here, there's a cap on the front here. So I'm just going to go ahead and use our little pocket screwdriver here. And we'll go ahead and pop off that little cover that's covering the center here. Now what we're doing is we're using a T50 Torx bit on the center here. Let's go ahead and loosen this. Now what we had to do is we're going to switch over to a pair of pliers here and grab the head of this bolt here and continue to spin it out. The reason is that our 1/2-inch drive components are hitting our fan assembly and it's making it hard for us to remove the tool. So simple, we're just going to grab our pliers here, just grab the head of it. You're not going to damage anything. and go ahead and just work that bolt out. The other option is to go ahead and simply remove this component once you get the water pump out of the vehicle. There's no correct or incorrect way to do that. We're just choosing to do this now. We're going to remove our bolt here for a tensioner. It's a 15 millimeter. So we want to get our socket in there on our ratchet. And let's go ahead and give this a good pull. I'm going to switch over to our gear wrench here for clearance purposes. And we'll just continue to spin this bolt out. Here's the bolt. I'm just going to go ahead and give this a couple light taps here to try and get that tensioner separated here. We have a little bit of aluminum corrosion going on there, so go ahead and remove that component. Let's go ahead and we're going to open up our clamp for our lower radiator hose here. Break that free, and we're going to try and work that. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work that hose upward and onto the water pump, and it's going to allow me to get in there and work that hose down. At this point here, we have our lower hose a little bit loose. Go ahead and use your pry tool to go ahead and assist you in getting that hose off. You can pop that hose off. Once that hose is off, you can go ahead and grab that clamp. Actually, we'll leave that clamp on there for now until we remove that water pump. Now we have a coolant tube right here that's bolted. We're going to use our 10 millimeter socket. Just get it loosened and remove that bolt there. Now, in order to remove our water pump, we got to go around and remove several bolts and studs. You can go around and count them. They go around all the way around the perimeter. We already removed our idler here and our tensioner from over here. So we have a few of these to work around. They're all 13 millimeter. Let's go ahead and get those removed. Now, a few of these bolts are going to be working blind, but you have the original the new water pump, so you can actually locate the bolts by feel. Now as I remove these here, I'm going to go ahead and set them in the water pump in the position they came out of. That way I can go ahead and identify them before installation. They might be different sizes. Now this one stud right here is a 15 millimeter. All the other ones are 13s. Now, even though we did drain our radiator and as much of that coolant as possible, we do have a catch can underneath with a bunch of towels to catch any residual coolant that is behind the water pump. Pretty good guarantee that there's going to be some there. At this point here, I'm going to go ahead and use my mallet, and I'm just going to gently tap this. Here comes the coolant. I'm going to slowly let that drain out into our catch can. Now on the top right here, we have a water neck that goes into the water pump. It's a tube, and it's usually held in as an O-ring in here. I'm going to go ahead and use our pry bar, and we're just going to gently work this tube here. Try and get that out of the water pump. Here we go. At this point here, we're going to try and manipulate our water pump up and out of the way. And there you have it. Now on our old water pump, we want to go ahead and swap over our thermostat neck here, and we want to go ahead and grab that thermostat inside as well. Using our 13 millimeter socket, let's go ahead and remove the bolts. We have our thermostat here. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. Now when we pulled off our thermostat neck here, we've seen that our gasket itself was damaged. So what we want to do is, at this point here, we're simply going to go ahead, get on in here, and we're going to pop this whole unit right out. Just going to use a pick, get in right behind that thermostat, pull this out. And the gasket is pretty much a rubber seal that goes around the perimeter here. We're just going to go ahead and pull this off. Go ahead and grab a towel here, wipe down your thermostat. Do a visual inspection. We didn't have a heating issue or cooling issue, so we're going to trust that our thermostat was working okay. Going to clean that up. We're going to set that aside for now. And we have our thermostat neck here. Let's go ahead and clean up that housing. I'm going to use a small piece of sandpaper here. Just going to clean this of any debris. I want to make sure that when we do put this all back together, that this has a nice smooth mounting surface. And that's ready for installation. When installing your thermostat, you want to make sure that the bleed valve, which is this little port on the top, you can see it on the other side here, is positioned at 12 o'clock when installing it into your water pump. You want to go ahead and take your thermostat, get your O-ring on there, make sure that seal is all the way around there, nice, lined up nice and tight. We'll go ahead and line this up, put that into your water pump. Once that's seated, you're going to take your water neck here, line that up. Let's go ahead and get our bolts started. Once both of these are in, we'll go ahead and snug them down. Now we have our water pump gasket here. You want to pay attention to the little rib that runs through the side here, because that's going to be the stopping point where that gasket will stop when it gets pressed in, and is pre-molded to shape, so it'll help you line things up. What you're going to do is slowly work your way around the perimeter, pressing this in. And that little rib we were just talking about helps capture that gasket into the water pump, so when you go to line this up and put it on the engine, it doesn't fall out. I'm going to continue to do this all the way around, making sure it's fully seated. At this point here, we're ready for installation. Now on the front side here, once we have our water pump off, we want to go ahead and clean the surface here. So you can go ahead and wipe it down first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some really fine sandpaper here on a block of wood. I'm going to go ahead and just gently clean that surface. And I'm using a block of wood because, well, it gives you a nice clean surface. You don't want to groove that aluminum. So using that block of wood, we'll give it a nice wide surface. And we're just going to continue to do this until our surface is nice and clean. And after that, we'll go ahead and install the water pump. All right, let's Let's go ahead and lower our water pump down in a position. I'm going to line up our coolant tube here as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get our center stud here lined up first. And get this started a couple threads. Just check around and make sure that gasket is still in place where it needs to be. We're just going to get a couple of the bolts started here. We're going to go ahead and get most of these bolts installed and get them in several threads before we pop this in. I want to go ahead and have this water pump stabilized before we go ahead and put some pressure on this here to work that in. All right, let's go ahead and snug those bolts down. So I'm going to start by snugging down that center stud. Let's go ahead and work our way around the perimeter. Okay, we have all of our bolts snug now. Now that we have our water pump seated, we're going to go ahead and work this coolant tube into place. And we got it to go in quite a bit. We're just going to go ahead and tap that with our mallet. Is now seated. Let's go ahead and install our bolt right there. Let's go ahead and snug down this bolt. Now we're just going to go ahead and snug it lightly because the O-ring holds this tube basically into place. So this doesn't have to be super tight. Once that bolt bottoms out, we're just going to give it just a little bit more. Right there. With the water pump installed, we're going to go ahead and get these bolts torqued down to 20 foot-pounds. Starting with our center stud there. Let's go ahead and torque down our thermostat or water neck bolts to 112 inch-pounds. Make sure you get that as inch-pounds. Otherwise, you will shear the bolts right out of the aluminum on the water pump. When we get to install our tensioner here, there is a little nub on the back side of it that's going to line up with a little port on our water pump housing itself. So go ahead and lower that down in. Get that lined up, and let's go ahead and get our bolt put down inside. And we get that bolt started a few threads. Get that threaded in as far as we can by hand. With that bolt in there, I'm going to go ahead and torque this down to 40 foot-pounds. I'm going to install our idler pulley here. Now for clearance purposes here, I can't get my Torx bit in here with the wrench. So just as we removed it, we're going to use a pair of pliers, and we're just going to go ahead and bring that bolt in a few threads here so we can go ahead and get clearance to go ahead and tighten that down. All right, we have that Torx bit bottomed out there. Let's go ahead and torque that into place. Let's go ahead and torque this down to 40 foot-pounds. Now I want to go ahead and install a hose clamp here. In our case, our lower hose clamp was compromised, so we're going to install an updated clamp here. Go ahead and install our hose clamp on the hose. Let's go ahead and get that hose put onto the water pump. Now that we have the hose all the way up in position, we can go ahead and grab that hose clamp, slide that back up. Now we have our clamp on here. We're going to go ahead and tighten this down. I'm going to make sure that that band is on there properly so we can get a good, nice, tight seal. Go ahead and pop the cover on the front of our idler pulley here. All right, let's go ahead and install our belt. Okay. Now our belt is run along everything it needs to be run on. I'm reaching behind the tensioner because the belt comes off the back side of our tensioner here. So what I now have to do is put our ratchet on here, twist our tensioner, and then put our belt on the back side of the pulley. All right, let's go ahead and flex that tensioner, stretch that belt on the back side. I'm going to go ahead and release this. With that released, what we want to do now is make sure that our belt is on all of our pulleys properly, all the way around our crankshaft, alternator. Everything looks good. We're going to install our upper radiator hose. Just going to get in there with our pliers here and open up that clamp a little bit. Just going to reposition that so we can get that seated properly. All right, our upper clamp and hose is in position. Go ahead and grab the upper part of that hose, work that onto the thermostat neck here. And I just want to go ahead and move this clamp down into position. Have our clamp in position, and our upper radiator hose is installed. Go ahead and take your air intake tube here. We're going to work that onto both the air box as well as our throttle body here. Now I want to go ahead and tighten down our hose clamps here. Snug those down, install that front connector on the intake sensor, press it till you hear it click in, and then press that red lock tab in. That'll lock it into place. Okay, and lower the cover down into place, lining up the pins, and press that down to lock it into place. Let's go ahead and put our under engine splash shield up and in. With our splash shield in its general location, we're going to go ahead and install the 2 screws on the back side here. Once we get those installed, we'll go ahead and snug them down. All right, let's go ahead and install our 2 rear screws here. All right, once we have these 2 caught, let's go ahead and snug those down. Go ahead and install our screws into our retaining clips here. I'm going to get a few of these started by hand first, then we'll go ahead and snug them down. Go ahead and start snugging these down. You're just going to complete the same process across the whole front side and onto your 2 edges. You just want to snug those. Once you feel them stop, then it's pretty much maxed out. And just continue for the rest of these. Now I'm going to go ahead and install the 3 plastic push pins on the driver's side. This one here, when you're pushing it in, you might be able to use a flathead screwdriver on the back side just to apply some pressure to the fender liner. Pull it forward, lock them together. Once you have these 3 in, go ahead and repeat for the passenger side. And we'll get these 2 in here. Once we snug this down, you can go ahead and repeat the process for the passenger side. Now what we're going to do is we want to top off the coolant system here. We're going to go ahead and come to our expansion tank. We want to put on our funnel unit here. We want to go ahead and use a recommended coolant for this vehicle application. We're going to continue to fill this up, and we're going to go ahead and start up the vehicle, let it get up to operating temperature. That could be 20 to 25 minutes. Let that thermostat open up and pull the coolant from here. You want to go ahead and make sure that we go ahead and make sure the system is topped off. It might take you a couple times to make sure that the system is buttoned up and topped off with coolant. Now at this point here, our cooling system will only take so much. On the top of our water pump here, we have a bleeder port. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use our number 9 Allen. We're going to loosen and remove this threaded port. This is going to allow for our engine to take more coolant. The engine is cool, so we want to go ahead and loosen this here. And we're going to continue to add coolant to our expansion tank there until we have some coolant come out through this port here. Here we have our coolant coming out. We're going to go ahead and install our plug. We're simply going to go ahead and snug that down. Once you feel it start to bottom out, just give it a little bit more. Now that we've buttoned up our bleeder screw there, we want to go ahead and pay attention to the tank here. There is a max line on this here. We're going to continue to fill up the expansion tank until this is at max. Then we're going to go ahead and remove our cap, button it up. We're going to go ahead and start up the vehicle, let it start to warm up, and use that coolant. It might take a couple times to go ahead and get this back to its max line here. As the engine's thermostat opens up, it'll take some of that coolant out of the tank. But we want to make sure that this is always topped off. Now that our expansion tank is at the full line here, we're going to start up the vehicle. We're going to put our heat on max, and we're going to let the vehicle run until we have good, steady, consistent heat. At the same time, we're going to watch our coolant level here. Let it run for about 15-20 minutes. Add coolant as necessary to maintain our max line. Then we can go ahead and remove our cap here and install our radiator cap, and we'll be all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.